The heart of every man craves a great adventure, but life doesn't usually feel that way. Jesus speaks of narrow gates and wide roads, but the masculine journey is filled with many twists and turns. So how do we keep from losing heart while trying to find the good way when life feels more like a losing battle than something worth dying for? Grab your gear and come on a quest with your band of brothers who will serve as the guides in what we call the masculine journey. The masculine journey starts here now.
Welcome to Masculine Journey. We are very glad to have you with us today. And Dennis.
Yes.
I'm excited about this topic today. Are you?
I'm pretty excited, too, I got to tell you.
Yeah?
I was excited last month when I started getting this word. So, and a little scared.
Absolutely. You know, I think that we're going to be following up on last week's show. And last week's show, Robbie, was about
advanced words. I have the mic that works currently.
Yeah, mine's cutting out.
We're struggling with it a little bit, but yeah. Last week we talked about in the new year how what a cool thing to ask God for an advanced word on what, where he wants to take you this year. And so, kind of neat that this week we're going to go in there to the advanced word that you got, right, Dennis?
Yeah. And I think as we ended the show last week, we had, I think I asked you for about 10 seconds of what to take from what we were talking about last week into this week, so maybe we can recap that. Because you said you didn't always do it, but...
Yeah, you got to. I got to remember if I actually can remember what I said. Okay. But I think it was something along the lines is make sure this week that you go out, take some time to be quiet, be alone, be with God, and let God guide you.
Yeah.
In that, and I think that's always a good, way to look at things. No matter what we talk about, it's kind of the hey Jesus, in Sunday school, right? It's the answer to a lot of it is to go out and say, okay, God, I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to be still. What do you have for me here? And I think that's kind of where we left off last week is just saying that's a great place to be no matter what the topic is.
Absolutely.
So, Dennis, I'm going to let you use this mic because it's working a whole lot better than that one.
Okay.
And you can kind of share how you got there.
Yeah, this is a word that, God actually spoke to you that we're going to talk about this week.
Yeah, it began when I went up to Virginia to see my parents over Thanksgiving, and when I was coming back, just a lot of things going through my mind about how last year had been and where 2018 may take me. And that's where I started having the conversation with God. And really, as Big Jim talked about last week, it started out with kind of listening. I basically said, God, I'm going to listen for a while and see if there's something that you give me because I've never really gotten this before outside of a boot camp. And I don't know where you're going to take me this year. And then when I came back shortly after, I was having a conversation with one of the guys a guy that I work for, and Phil and I were talking about this, and he brought up Joshua 1, being strong and courageous. And therein from Scripture there is where the word came from because it was it tied in. It was like a light bulb went off. I thought, courage. This is it. It's the word courage. Now what do you want me to do with it, God? Because I had no clue where he wanted me to take that. So that's kind of how it started out.
Well, courage is very similar to the word brave.
Yeah.
And we actually have a clip, Robbie, that talks about that word brave, correct?
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, we'll switch the microphones around here and we'll get it going. So enjoy us as we do this.
We have a clip from the incredible, The Ghost and Mr. Chicken.
Yeah, you got the wrong Don.
Yeah, not the Incredible Mr. Libbit, but The Ghost and Mr. Chicken. And in this scene, as it picks up, they have talked Don Knotts into going into this haunted house because they wanted to do a newspaper story. And as you can imagine, sort of Barney in this haunted house getting terrified, he comes in terrified. And so this newspaper reporter has now sat him down in front of the typewriter and he's typing his story for him like he is actually brave, which sells a bunch of copies. And now the whole town thinks this is the bravest man that ever walked that sat in this haunted house with all this murder that had gone on and whatever. And so they get him to do something else, which is just public speak, which is where I think the clip is absolutely hilarious because if you're involved in public speaking, you often find yourself interviewing people like I do on the radio. And when they're terrified, they tend to go on and on about something and you think they're getting somewhere. And then all of a sudden they're just done. And so here's Barney / Don Knotts in The Ghost of Mr. Chicken.
Now, Luther, tell us what happened.
It was terrible. It was just terrible.
Oh, no, he's going to cry. Now, steady. Now, Luther, tell us about it.
It was terrible. It was just terrible. I'll never get over it as long as I live.
Hey, great opening line. I'll never get over it as long as I live. Okay, Luther, go on.
Look out the house. Lightning, thunder. Zoom, zoom, down the coal chute.
I arrived at the house. Giving careful consideration to the most advantageous means of entry, I selected the coal chute.
You've never seen anything like it. Hey, Al, run out for the 500. It's selling like hotcakes.
Thank you, Mayor and fellow Rachelanians. I'm proud to be here today.
Attaboy, Luther!
When I was asked to be guest speaker at this luncheon, I asked myself this. Who are you, Luther Haggs, to be a guest speaker at this luncheon? I thought about my answer about being a guest speaker for a long time. Well, what is a guest speaker? Let me clarify this. I have been called brave. What is brave? Let me clarify this. Of course, we all know that it is short for bravery. That goes without even being said. But it is also a symbol of another thing. It is a symbol of doing one's duty no matter what is scaring him personally.
Attaboy, Luther!
Take your World War II. There were many heroes in World War II. What were your heroes? Who were your heroes? Let me clarify this. Thank you for having me.
Kind of an abrupt ending to that, wasn't it, Robbie?
Yeah, Luther had his moment in the sun.
Yeah, he had a few moments.
And of course, anybody who's ever attacked public speaking, it's amazing how their tempo picks up and how they are, just like right now, just adept at going nowhere.
Reminded me of my first speech.
Yeah. So I personally looked into this passage. It was really fascinating to me. And, in Joshua, it says, be strong and courageous. But if you looked inside the Hebrew of that, it's hamak, which is sort of like hazak. It's like to grab hold of God, or to be strong is to be lashed to something. Yeah. And the amates has to do with like eager feet. And when I started to think about that eager feet, Dennis, I thought, wow, that really had to speak to Joshua, because there were 12 spies that were sent into the land, and Joshua and Caleb were the only two who had the eager feet to go back. Yeah. Or David had the eager feet to take on Goliath, or Peter had the eager feet to get out of the boat. But in each case, Jesus is saying that hamak, before he goes to be eager feet, you're supposed to go there with me and lashed onto me. It's a beautiful picture.
Yeah, the problem is, for me, is that I never really handled it quite that way. I never had the eager feet, and I never looked at myself as being very courageous. As a matter of fact, I kind of looked at myself up until a few years ago as being kind of more like this next guy in this next clip that we have.
Which clip's
that? He was king of the jungle for a bit.
He was, yeah. One of our favorite childhood movies, giving away our age.
What makes a king out of a slave? Courage. What makes the flag on the mast to wave? Courage. What makes the elephant charge his tusk in the misty mist or the dusky dusk? What makes the muskrat guard his musk? Courage. What makes the sphinx the seventh wonder? Courage. What makes the dawn come up like thunder? Courage. What makes the Hottentot so hot? What puts the apron apricot? What have they got that I ain't got? Courage. You could say that again.
So that, my friends, was the story of my life. What has he got that I don't have? Because I talked that word courage quite a bit, but when it came down to it, I'm still having a flashback of nightmares about the flying monkeys in Wizard of Oz. But anyhow, the Cowardly Lion kind of reminded me of it. Sadly, kind of reminded me of how I felt of myself for many years of my life, that I could talk courage, but I didn't know where I'd ever really shown it, or what that really would look like. And it just started to happen a few years ago when I walked into the Winston-Salem Rescue Mission, because maybe for the first time in a long time in my life, if ever, it took courage to not just walk in there, but to stay there and to go through the programs that I went through. And I came out feeling like, well, maybe I have a little bit of courage now. And I think that's kind of, again, where God has taken me with this. He encouraged me in December by saying, you have some courage, now go out and be strong and courageous.
And I think that's one of the things that we need to realize. We weren't put here with a lack of courage. We were never intended to have a lack of courage, but life comes in, the enemy comes in, and robs us of something that we were intended to have. Yep. Right? God in Joshua reminds, what was it, 4 times, be strong and courageous. Right? Not you need to become, I made you to be this way. Right? And so I think that's going to take us to our next clip, where there needs something in our life to come in and remind us, and we're going to get to that clip after the break, that we need to be the way God intended us to be. We need to find a way back to that place of courage, which is short for courageous, kind of like brave and bravery. But we have a clip that we're going to talk about from Robin Hood, and it's the movie with, what's his name? I can never remember it. Russell Crowe.
There you go.
Yeah, Russell Crowe. And it's a great little small part of the movie, but it's an amazing truth to it. And that's where we need some intervention. And so part of the rest of the show that we're going to talk about is, if something's come in and taking that courage from you, if you've never felt like you had it to begin with, where did those lies kind of come from? But how do you come in and you kind of break them? Andy, I know that there's probably been times in your life that you had to face some things that you weren't necessarily courageous of, but over time, doesn't God kind of help you get to that place where you can have some of that?
Well, absolutely. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. I mean, public speaking, like in the...
Robbie's moving the microphone in front of him and trying to make him embarrassed.
All right, okay. So thanks for your encouragement there, Robbie.
This is a time for courage, Andy.
That's right.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, that has always been a difficult part for me, is just developing that courage or that strength. But it was always, I was trying to do it within myself. But Robbie's point about, where we're supposed to bind ourselves to the Lord and He carries us through and gives us that courage to take on the next.
That's right. Thing. And a great place to get that courage is to go to a boot camp. Go to masculinejourneyradio.org to register now. Hi, this is Sam with Masculine Journey. I'm here with my son Eli. We're going to talk about ways that you can help support the ministry. One way, you can go to smile.amazon.com. There's information on our website there on how to do that.
Then you can go to facebook.com, where you can click the donate button, or you can go to masculinejourneyradio.org. Once again, look for the donate button.
Or if you want to mail something in, mail it to P.O. Box 550, Kernersville, North Carolina, 27285.
I am William Wallace. You've come to fight as free men, and free men you are. What will you do without freedom?
Find out from Jesus what you will do with that freedom. A 4-day adventure with God. It's a Masculine Journey Radio Boot Camp. Boot Camp is designed to give men permission to be what God designed them to be, passionate warriors for the kingdom. Coming in April the 12th through the 15th. Go to masculinejourneyradio.org to register while you're thinking about it.
A little bit of Tom Petty there, Dennis. Good choice.
I love the late, great Tom Petty. Such a great lyricist. And that song kind of reminded me, we were talking before the break, of the times that I struggled with feeling like I had any courage. And it really kind of started when not to tell the whole story, but it kind of started when I was a kid, because I was a little scrawny kid. And in our little neighborhood in Northern Virginia, I would be the one that got beat up most of the time. So this clip from Tom Petty, when I was listening to it, I thought he's talking about not backing down, but it's not it's not from a standpoint of bullying, being a bully. It's from a standpoint of standing up for something and standing up for what you believe in. And those are the things that those old agreements have had to be broken. that I didn't have what it took in order to be courageous. And that started as there may be a listener out there right now that they struggle with that today, and it may go all the way back to when you were younger and you just had it ingrained in your head by someone else out there, the enemy, that you did not have what it took.
Yeah, and I think one of the things to remember is, the enemy doesn't stop. And so you're going to need repeated periods of courageousness to have courage to step into something. It's not like, oh, got that mastered. Now I can move on, right? You need these constant reminders. You need these things that come in and say, okay, you can do this. And I want to go to the clip that we talked a little bit about before we went to break from the movie Robin Hood with Russell Crowe. And in this clip, there's a reminder. There's an older guy that's talking and kind of a sage kind of character and reminding Robin of some things that he had long forgotten.
You need to know what I know. Your father was a stonemason. Is that pleasing to you?
Yes, it is.
But he was more than that. He was a visionary.
What did he see?
That kings have a need of their subjects, no less than their subjects have need of kings. A dangerous idea. Your father was a philosopher. He had a way of speaking that took you by the ears and by the heart.
None of these things can be written down, Robin. You must commit them to your very soul. This is the science of memory.
Rise and rise again until lambs become lions.
Finally, hundreds listened, thousands, who took up his call for the rights of all ranks, from baron to serf.
Rise and rise again until lambs become lions.
That clip, Dennis, I know you picked that one for today's show. So What was it about that clip that really spoke to you?
Well, I thought it was, he was taking him back to what his father was instilling, that you go from this place and you become, what I saw was and it's interesting now because I'm thinking about something entirely different. I'm thinking about a Big Daddy Weave song that talks about Jesus being the lion and the lamb. So how do we contrast that? How do we look at, well, I want to go from being a lamb to being a courageous lion, but biblically, from what we learned about Jesus, he was both of those things, wasn't he? Am I wrong with that?
Yeah, and we were made to have both of those characteristics, but something kind of comes in and steals that from us, right? And what I liked about that clip was there was an active part played of someone that was reminding of let's get back to the deepest truths, and that changed in the movie anyway, the path of this person. Well, God continually does that with us. Robbie, I wanted to ask you about a clip that I know that you picked for today, but it's kind of about a person that has to face the exact same thing that they failed at before, right?
Yeah, in the movie Top Gun, the Maverick character, played by Tom Cruise, loses his best friend as they fly through the jet wash of another plane in an exercise where they're learning how to be fighter pilots. And it messed with his brain because he was kind of the hot shot, always took the lead, and didn't think he really even probably needed to go to Top Gun school in order to be a Top Gun. He kind of thought he had already arrived. But it was an interesting thing that through these lessons that he learned at school, when he actually finds himself in this battle with the MiGs, which you'll hear in a minute, that we've played the clip before where they're asking him to engage. And, of course, he's got to break some agreements. Satan's bringing it up that you can't do this, you don't have what it takes. Yeah, he's got to break some agreements, and he asked to speak to Goose, but who he's really asking to speak to is Jesus. But then I want you to pay close attention to something else that happened. That not only did he face his fear, but he actually had the humility to learn the lesson, which was to stay with his wingman and to not be a one-man show and to not any longer be the Maverick, the Lone Ranger, but actually to become a team player. As you listen to this, there's a lot of wisdom in the way we live our masculine journey. It's one thing to be brave, go out there and be a Maverick. It's another thing to be brave to go out there and be somebody's wingman. And so play the clip.
still coming around. He's still coming around. He's gonna get behind us.
I'm not leaving my wingman.
I'm on his tail. I'm on his tail. I'm going for it. I'm going for it. I'm going for the shot right now. Roger, engage. Okay, radar lock. Control, I'm taking a shot. Fire! Bingo!
Flash that sucker, yeah! Ice, watch out, there's a big to your right. He's firing!
I'm hit, I'm hit! We're hitting the right engine! I'm shutting it down, I'm shutting it down! Move, there's a MiG on your tail, there's a MiG on your tail!
We've got a problem here, we've only got one missile left. Approaching 110 miles, sir.
Good. I got him, he's right on us, he's between our tails! What are you doing? You're slowing down, you're slowing down!
I'm bringing him in closer, Merlin.
You're gonna do what? This is it, Maverick!
I'm gonna hit the brakes, he'll fly right by.
He's gonna get a lock on us!
I got a good lock. Firing.
Splashboard!
Mustang, this is Voodoo 3. Remaining MiGs are bugging out.
Robbie chased Andy away. No, Andy's sitting over the corner. No, we have Wayne with us for this part of the show, and that was predetermined we were going to do that. But Wayne, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, what we learned from that clip that Robbie set up was we have to get called back into a place that really kind of could make us nervous if we're not walking with God, right? He's not going to just all of a sudden we have courage and we always have it from that point, moving on, but God will continually take you to these places. Now, at boot camp, he took you to a place that was uncomfortable for you, but he's repeated that since then, hasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sitting here listening to Robbie talk, and I'm reminded of how over the last 3 years, God has constantly given me an individual over and over to speak with. And at the last boot camp, he allowed me to stand up in front of a lot of guys and speak, which is it's a pain point for me. I've always carried this fear of what man thinks of me. So he's been dealing with that, and I just realized, on that level, again, as Robbie was talking. But I just got back from a conference out in L.A., and at that conference, he did it again. He made a way for me to stand in front of hundreds of people, completely outside of my comfort zone, make a prophetic declaration that I am no longer a slave to fear, that God has given me a spirit of love and a sound mind and power. And all these words started coming, and it was all encouragement to the folks that were there, and how the enemy does do that, how he comes to steal the things that God gives us, how he will inevitably show his hand, if you will. It's amazing how he sees the glory that God has put on us. He sees a bit of the story that God has called us into, and he attacks that, tries to steal that. And it's an amazing journey. It's a little scary because I don't know where that goes from here.
Well, where it goes, and thank you for setting that up, is where it does go is it goes with a continued walk with God. All right, and I want to go ahead and get to this other clip to make sure we get it in. And we don't have time for the clip? Oh, 1 minute. We don't have time for the clip. Robbie, can you tell us a little bit about the clip that we're not going to get to so people could go look it up on YouTube?
Yeah, well, it's from Hacksaw Ridge, and you have Private Dobbs, who looked like a chicken, essentially. He wasn't going to fight for his country, but when he got up there and all these people were wounded, the famous line from the movie and from the clip is, "I just want one more, God. I just want one more." And so when I think of the concept of eager feet, this amates, this Hebrew of this man had eager feet when the going got tough. He was the one that I think he saved over 100 men that night. Just an amazing story of courage and bravery.
It's a true story too, and if you haven't seen the movie, it's It's a brutal movie to watch, but it's an amazing movie in the fact that it's a true story of this man who would not carry a gun, but was on the battlefield long past everybody else, you know, getting one more. Now, Dennis, this was a topic that was laid on your heart. So was there something that you'd like to leave with the listeners as we start to go into the end of the show?
You can't do this alone, and you don't have to do it alone. I think we've all spoken to at different times during this show about the fact that it's not alone. But you have to have God with you. You have to have other brothers with you. We get guys that are hesitant to come to boot camps because they think, well, I can handle this on my own. We're kind of pre-wired for that. We can't. And that's what God revealed to me. Actually, he said, how's that work for you? And when I gave him the answer, it was pretty clear that I didn't move forward with courage alone, that I moved forward with him and with brothers around me.
Thank you. And if you want to go to the next boot camp, we'd love to have you there. It's coming up April 12th through 15th, and it's going to be at an amazing place here in North Carolina at the Carolina Bible Camp. Please come. Go to masculinejourneyradio.org to register. And we are still doing the BOGO. I think it's through today. I don't know. We still have the BOGO. Go register now.